Once you reach your 70s, most people think there are no more retirement strategies left to learn. They've sorted the pension. They've claimed the state pension. They've retired. They assume the planning phase is finished and the spending phase has begun. But here's what the most financially prepared retirees in this country know that most people don't. Your 70s are actually when some of the most valuable tax planning opportunities become available. Not because the government sends you a letter, not because a bank calls you up, but because your retirement income, your pensions, your ISAs, and your investments are now working together in ways that create opportunities most people never understand and never use. By the end of this video, you'll know 7 completely legal strategies built directly into UK tax law that can reduce the tax you pay on your retirement income, protect more of what you've spent a lifetime building, and help you leave far more to your family when the time comes. The 7th strategy is the one that surprises people most. Even retirees who've done everything right often haven't used it. This video isn't specifically about turning 70. It's about the stage of retirement, which for many people does fall somewhere in their 70s, where several things are now true at the same time. You're receiving the state pension, currently £241.30 a week, and it uses up almost all of the £12,570 personal allowance on its own. You're drawing from a personal pension or SIP, or you haven't touched it yet, which is a strategic decision in itself. You probably hold ISA money built up over years of contributions. You may own investments outside those wrappers, sitting on unrealized gains. You may have a spouse or civil partner whose income picture looks different from yours. And you are, whether you've thought about it or not, beginning to think about what happens to all of this when you're no longer here. That combination, state pension income plus pensions plus ISAs plus investments plus estate, is exactly the situation where deliberate, informed planning makes the biggest financial difference. Not clever products, not risky moves, just understanding which tools you already have and using them in the right order. All figures in this video are verified for the 2026-27 tax year against HMRC, gov.uk, the DWP's official rate tables, and MoneyHelper. This is general factual information, not personal tax or financial advice. Let's start with the strategy that makes the biggest single difference for most people in this position, and the one that most people get wrong by default. If you have a SIP or personal pension, and you haven't yet taken all of it, you have something extremely valuable: the ability to choose how much taxable income you receive each year. And that choice, made deliberately, is one of the most powerful tax planning tools available to any UK retiree. Here's the mechanics. Your state pension of £12,547.60 a year already uses up almost all of your £12,570 personal allowance, leaving just £22.40 of tax-free headroom. Everything above £12,570 gets taxed at 20%, up to £50,270. Above that, you're at 40%. So the question every year is simple: how much pension income do I take? And does it push me above £50,270? Now consider 2 people with identical pension pots. Let's call them Margaret and David. Both have a state pension and a SIP worth £200,000. Margaret takes no advice and withdraws £30,000 from her SIP in one tax year because she needs money for home improvements. Her total income is over £42,000, solidly in the basic rate band, but close to the higher rate threshold. David does the same home improvements, but splits the withdrawal over 2 tax years, taking £15,000 this year and £15,000 next year. He also draws £10,000 from his ISA instead of his pension for some of the costs, since ISA withdrawals carry no income tax at all. David's taxable income stays lower both years, and the ISA withdrawal costs him nothing in tax. Same amount of money spent, very different tax bills. There's another dimension here that many people in their 70s haven't considered. If your SIP is largely untouched, perhaps because you've been living off other income since you retired, and you're now in a lower income year, that can be the ideal time to draw a larger amount from the pension specifically to use up the basic rate band, rather than waiting until state pension plus other income pushes future withdrawals automatically into 40%. This sounds counterintuitive. Taking more from a pension on purpose? But if you'd pay 20% now and 40% later, drawing down while the rate is lower is straightforwardly better mathematics. The principle is the same every time. Know which tax band you're in, know how much headroom you have before the next threshold, and use ISAs to fill the gap rather than pensions wherever possible. If strategy 1 is about managing what comes out of your pension, strategy 2 is about building a source of income that doesn't touch the tax calculation at all. An ISA, individual savings account, shelters everything inside it from income tax, capital gains tax, and dividend tax. You've probably heard this. But what most people in their 70s haven't fully thought through is just how valuable that shelter becomes when it's combined with pension drawdown strategy. Every pound you can draw from an ISA instead of a pension is a pound that doesn't add to your taxable income for the year. And because the state pension already uses up most of the personal allowance, ISA withdrawals are often the only way to fund spending without triggering more tax at all. The ISA allowance for 2026-27 is £20,000. If you're 65 or over, and everyone watching this video is, you keep the full £20,000 cash ISA allowance even after the April 2027 rule changes that cut the cash ISA allowance to £12,000 for younger savers. The rule change specifically protects you. So if you have spare cash sitting in a bank account earning taxable interest, moving it into a cash ISA each year shelters that interest permanently from tax. For those with stocks and shares ISAs, the additional benefit is that investment growth, dividends, capital appreciation, everything accumulates entirely without generating a tax liability. No dividend tax, no capital gains tax when you sell, no entry on your tax return. In a long retirement, the compound effect of that shelter on investment growth is substantial. One more thing worth understanding: flexible ISAs. Many modern ISA accounts are flexible, meaning if you withdraw money during the tax year and then decide you don't need it, you can put the same amount back in without it counting against your £20,000 annual allowance. This makes a flexible ISA an ideal emergency pot. You can dip in and out without permanently losing the allowance for that year. And if your spouse or civil partner passes away, you're entitled to inherit an additional ISA allowance called the Additional Permitted Subscription, equal to the value of their ISA at the time of death. That's a one-off allowance on top of your own £20,000, and it lasts 3 years from the date of death or 3 years after the ISA is closed, whichever is later. Strategy 3 is for married couples and civil partners, and it's one of the most straightforward, high-value pieces of planning available. Yet roughly 2 million eligible couples across the UK still haven't claimed it. Here's the idea. If one partner has income below the personal allowance of £12,570, they can transfer £1,260 of that unused allowance to the other partner, as long as the receiving partner is a basic rate taxpayer. Income between £12,571 and £50,270. This cuts their tax bill by up to £252 a year. It costs nothing to set up, takes 10 minutes on gov.uk, and you can backdate the claim all the way to the 2022-23 tax year, potentially unlocking a one-off payment of over £1,000 on top of the ongoing annual saving. But this is strategy 3 rather than a standalone tip because it connects to something bigger: deliberate household income planning in retirement. Many couples retire with very different income profiles. One might have a full state pension and a significant workplace pension. The other might have a partial state pension, or none at all, or a much smaller private pension. In that situation, the partner with higher income is probably already paying basic rate tax on some pension income, while the other partner's personal allowance is partially or fully unused. Marriage allowance addresses that directly. But there's a wider version of this. If one partner has a larger SIP than the other, think carefully about whose pension income is drawn and when. If one partner's state pension already fills most of their personal allowance, while the other partner has significant unused allowance, it may be more tax efficient to draw income from the second partner's pension first, keeping as much income as possible within unused allowance and leaving the higher income partner's pension to continue growing tax-free inside the wrapper until it's needed. For Scottish taxpayers, the marriage allowance receiving partner's income band goes up to £43,662 rather than £50,270 because of Scotland's separate income tax structure. And if either partner was born before 6 April 1935, there's a potentially more generous alternative called married couples allowance worth checking first. This is the strategy most people have heard of in principle, but almost nobody actually does in practice. And it costs them real money every single year. Your capital gains tax allowance, the annual exempt amount, is £3,000 for 2026-27. That's the amount of gain you can realize on investments outside a pension or ISA before paying any capital gains tax at all. If you sell investments inside a pension or ISA, CGT doesn't apply regardless. But for anything held in a general investment account, brokerage account, or directly held shares, that £3,000 allowance is yours every year. Here's the problem most people have. They hold investments that have grown over a long period, and when they eventually need to sell, to fund care costs, to help a grandchild, or simply to restructure their finances, they sell a large amount in one go. All those gains crystallize in a single tax year. Instead of paying CGT on £3,000 of gains at 18% or 24%, they're paying it on £30,000 or £50,000. A straightforward annual trimming strategy, selling a slice of holdings each year, specifically to use up the £3,000 allowance, and then immediately buying back the same investment inside a stocks and shares ISA, keeps more of the gains sheltered every year. This is called BED and ISA, and it's one of the most underused tools in UK personal finance. The maths on this compound over time. If your £3,000 allowance goes unused every year for 10 years, £30,000 of future gains are sitting exposed to CGT whenever you eventually need to sell. Use the allowance every year for 10 years, and that exposure disappears. Cost? Nothing. Benefit? Meaningful. If you're married or in a civil partnership, you can also transfer assets to your spouse between you, with no CGT at that point, effectively doubling the annual allowance available before a sale. A couple using both allowances can shelter £6,000 of gains per year, again, entirely legally, and built directly into the tax rules. For gains that do fall outside the allowance, the rate depends on your income band. If the gain falls within your basic rate band, income up to £50,270 including the gain, it's taxed at 18%. Above that threshold, it's 24%. One more reason why knowing your income band before you sell is worth 2 minutes of calculation. This is the strategy most people never think about until it's too late to do anything about it. And it's also the one most likely to affect your family. Pensions, SIPPs, personal pensions, and most workplace pensions don't automatically pass to whoever inherits the rest of your estate. They follow their own rules. And those rules are changing in a way that makes this the most important time in a generation to pay attention to them. First, the basic mechanism. Most defined contribution pensions, the kind with a pot of money, not a guaranteed income stream, allow you to nominate beneficiaries directly with the pension provider. This isn't the same as a will. A pension nomination is a separate form submitted to the pension scheme, and the trustees use it as guidance when deciding who receives the fund after you die. Your will does not control your pension. If your nomination form names an old partner, an estranged family member, or simply says, "my estate," because you never updated it, that's who the trustees will consider, regardless of what your will says. For 2026-27, money still inside an uncrystallized pension when someone dies can be paid to beneficiaries with significant tax advantages depending on the age at death. If you die before 75, pension benefits can often be paid out to named beneficiaries with no income tax to pay at all. If you die at 75 or over, beneficiaries pay income tax at their own rate on whatever they draw from the inherited pension. But they only pay when they actually withdraw the money, giving them considerable control over when and how they take it. Now here's the change everyone needs to know about, whether they've already retired or are still planning. From 6 April 2027, most unused pension funds and pension death benefits will be brought inside your estate for inheritance tax purposes. Currently, for many people, An unused pension pot sits completely outside the estate and can pass to children or grandchildren without the 40% inheritance tax charge that applies to other assets. That protection disappears in April 2027. The DWP estimates around 10,500 more estates per year will pay inheritance tax because of this single change, with an average additional bill of around £34,000. Spousal exemptions remain. Assets passing between spouses and civil partners are still exempt. Death in service lump sum benefits are also excluded from the new rules. But if you're currently holding a large pension pot, specifically because it's sat outside your estate for IHT purposes, the time to review that strategy is now, not in April 2027. The single most important practical action here: check your pension nomination forms are up to date and name exactly who you want. Call your pension provider or log into your online pension account. The form may be buried, out of date, or simply missing. For a task that takes 15 minutes, the financial impact on your family could be enormous. This section is the one that consistently generates the most comments of surprise, because the people watching a video like this are exactly the people who assume they won't qualify for any means-tested support. Pension credit. For 2026/27, this tops up weekly income to £238 if you're single, or £363.25 for a couple. There is no upper savings limit on the guarantee credit element. The first £10,000 of your savings is completely ignored. Every additional £500 above that adds just £1 a week of assumed income. For someone with £30,000 in savings, that's only £40 a week of additional assumed income. And pension credit could still be worth something on top of that. 2 million eligible pensioners aren't claiming it. Checking takes 20 minutes on gov.uk. A small pension credit award also acts as a gateway to full council tax reduction, cold weather payments, NHS help with costs, and potentially a winter fuel payment protected from clawback. Winter fuel payment. This changed twice in 2 years, and many people are still confused about the current rules. So here's the confirmed position for winter 2026-27. The payment is £200 for households where the oldest person is under 80, or £300 if anyone in the household is 80 or over. It is now paid to all state pension age households with an income below £35,000 per person. Not means tested at the point of payment, but clawed back by HMRC from anyone above the £35,000 threshold. If you receive pension credit, you're protected from the clawback entirely. Qualifying week for 2026-27 is 21 to 27 September 2026. In Scotland, this is administered separately through the pension age winter heating payment. Attendance allowance. This is the most underused benefit on this list, and it could be the most valuable. For 2026-2027, attendance allowance pays £76.70 a week at the lower rate and £114.60 a week at the higher rate. That's up to £5,959.20 a year. It is entirely not means tested. Your income and savings are completely irrelevant. It's based purely on care need, specifically whether you need help with personal care or supervision to stay safe because of a physical or mental health condition. You must be over state pension age. You don't need to actually be receiving care to qualify. The test is whether you reasonably meet it. An estimated 1 million people in the UK are eligible for attendance allowance and have never applied, many because they assumed their income or savings would disqualify them. Receiving attendance allowance can also trigger increases in pension credit through a disability addition, make you eligible for council tax reduction at a higher rate, and allow a family member who cares for you for 35 or more hours a week to claim carer's allowance, currently £83.30 a week in 2026. If you live in Scotland, attendance allowance is being replaced by pension age disability payment, delivered by Social Security Scotland. The rates are identical, and the eligibility criteria are broadly the same. This is the strategy that affects your family long after you're gone, and because of the pension IHT change coming in April 2027, it has never been more time-sensitive to understand properly. The UK inheritance tax nil rate band is £325,000 per person, frozen until April 2031. There's an additional residence nil rate band of £175,000 if you pass your main home to direct descendants, children, grandchildren. That gives a potential combined threshold of £500,000 per person, or £1 million for a married couple combining both sets of allowances. Anything above those thresholds is taxed at 40%. The gifting rules are where the best opportunities sit, and most people use only one of them. The annual gift exemption allows every individual to give away £3,000 each tax year free of IHT, immediately and permanently outside the estate. If you didn't use last year's allowance, you can carry it forward by 1 year, so in some years you can give away £6,000 in total, using this year's and last year's combined. Both you and your spouse or civil partner each have this allowance. A couple can give away £6,000 a year in combined annual exemptions. The 7-year rule covers gifts above the annual exemption, larger amounts given outright. These are called potentially exempt transfers. Give them away and survive 7 years, and they fall entirely outside your estate, free of IHT. Give them away within 3 years of death, and the full 40% applies. Between 3 and 7 years, a sliding scale called taper relief reduces the percentage owed. But there's a third gifting rule that almost nobody uses, and it's potentially the most powerful of all, the normal expenditure out of income exemption. This allows you to make regular gifts from surplus income, money you genuinely don't need to maintain your standard of living, and those gifts fall immediately outside your estate, with no 7-year clock and no annual limit. The conditions are 3. The gifts must be made from income, not capital. They must be regular and habitual. Monthly, annual birthday gifts, regular payments into a grandchild's ISA or pension. And they must not reduce your standard of living. A retired couple with a combined net income of $70,000 and annual expenditure of $50,000 could, in theory, give $20,000 a year to their family under this exemption, immediately outside the estate. No survival period required. Keep clear records using HMRC Form IHT 403 to document the gifts as you make them. The exemption is claimed on death, and evidence matters. Other small gift exemptions include wedding gifts, up to £5,000 to a child, £2,500 to a grandchild, £1,000 to anyone else, and gifts of up to £250 to any number of individuals in a single tax year, provided you haven't used another exemption on the same person. All of this sits alongside the pension IHT change coming in April 2027. With unused pensions about to come inside the estate, the right combination of pension drawdown, annual gifting, and normal expenditure out of income planning can make a significant difference to what your family ultimately keeps. These decisions are personal, and the right approach depends entirely on your specific income, assets, and family. A qualified FCA-regulated financial advisor or estate planning solicitor can map out the options specific to you. But knowing that these tools exist is the starting point. Let's close with something you can act on. 1. Review your pension drawdown level every year before the tax year ends. Know exactly which tax band your total income falls in and whether taking slightly more or slightly less from your pension, or drawing from an ISA instead, would reduce the tax you pay this year. 2. Maximize your ISA allowance annually if you can, £20,000 a year, and if you're 65 or over, the full cash ISA amount is protected even after April 2027 rule changes. Every pound sheltered inside an ISA is a pound free of income tax, capital gains tax, and dividend tax, indefinitely. 3. If you're married or in a civil partnership with different income levels, check the marriage allowance claim on gov.uk today. 10 minutes, up to £252 a year, plus backdated lump sum. 2 million eligible couples haven't done this. 4. Use your £3,000 capital gains tax allowance every year rather than letting it expire. Consider the bed and ISA approach, selling a portion of investments outside a wrapper annually and rebuy inside the ISA to move more into the tax-free shelter over time. 5. Update your pension nomination forms immediately, then check them every 2 to 3 years. Your will does not control your pension. The nomination form does, and an out-of-date one can have lasting consequences for your family. 6. Check your attendance allowance eligibility, regardless of income or savings. It's not means-tested, and an estimated 1 million eligible people haven't applied. If you help care for someone, check carer's allowance too. 7. Check pension credit, even if you're sure you don't qualify. The £10,000 savings disregard and the absence of any upper savings limit mean more people are eligible than realize it. 8. Start planning your estate gifting now, not later. Use the £3,000 annual exemption. Consider normal expenditure out of income if you have surplus pension or investment income. Understand the 7-year rule for larger gifts, and review the pension IHT change coming April 2027 with a professional before it arrives. All 7 of these strategies are built into UK tax law. They're on HMRC's own website, in the DWP's published rate tables, in MoneyHelper's free guidance. They're not secret. They're just almost never explained clearly in one place in plain English.